Hello everybody, Conundrum here, and welcome back to Automation, the car company tycoon game. Today we're continuing on in our Vector Automotive Challenge. Last time we built our car, the Vex-Tron, and used the BMW Straight 6 that you guys voted on. And here's the basic statistics of that vehicle. We have a sportiness of 36, tameness 57, comfort 18, prestige 25, safety 22. Those are great, they're statistics, but we don't really know what that means for our car just yet, because we don't have anything to compare it to. So I asked you guys to suggest some things to build, and I have picked 3, as I said I would, and the 3 are a pretty broad spectrum of late 90s sports cars, which there's not a very large group of vehicles to choose from in this era. But there are some pretty cool ones, including one that took me kind of off guard and one that I'd sort of forgotten about and I'm really excited to build. First up we have the 1998 WS6, which is a Pontiac Firebird Special Edition car. I chose the 98 rather than the 97 because it's the first year for the LS motor, and I thought that would be interesting considering we almost chose the LS one as one of our engines. So let's go ahead and build that. I am going to use the engine we already built. I did tune it to make sure it matched the factory specs of the WS6. The chassis material, apparently it has bottles in it, who knows, is galvanized steel, or sorry, corrosive resistant steel, let's not get crazy. It is, of course, front longitudinal. It is McPherson strut up front. No, correction. It is double wishbone up front. And in the rear, it is a solid axle. So it is a solid axle coil setup. It is rear wheel drive. And it has a combination steel, corrosion resistant steel, and polymer body. But it is mostly steel, so we'll go with that. The wheelbase is 101 inches. So we will choose the chassis that matches that the best. The short version of that one is 98.8. I do not care what it looks like. We are not even going to dress these cars up to match their factory looks, because that is essentially irrelevant to us. There was a 2-door version of one of the sedans. I want to say it was this one. I always do that. I clicked that instead of that, and I thought it might match better than this one, but I guess it's not. I do need to back the year up before I forget. There we go. And let's see, that one's 82, 93. Yeah, I guess it's gonna have to be the front-wheel drive looking body. Hopefully the LS fits in this. We will see. I do need to put a grill on it, at least, just to give us the airflow ability. Done. And yeah, that's why I am not going to dress these cars up, is that the bodies we have don't exactly match this era of car. So we're just looking for the wheelbase and the statistics that will get us close enough. I do actually, let me delete that. I do need to widen these arches, because I need to fit some wide tires under this thing. Can I widen it more? I cannot. What about the rear? Yes, I can. Okay, perfect. That is exactly, I think, what I needed. Front 225, that is not quite wide enough, actually. That could be a problem. Problems. Let's see. Do we choose this body even though it's a little bit shorter? I think we do. It seems like it's gonna match a little bit better. Especially since we'll be able to fit the tires we need to fit in here. So let's do that. This is all for fun. This is not an exact science or anything like that. We are dealing with a fictional world, so I'm going to take some liberties here and there. We can skip this because we have this engine. And like I said, I did tune it to match WS6 standards. There it is. So we'll choose that one. I will go through it just so you guys can see. So there is the basic statistics. There is our horsepower and torque. The 320 horsepower is correct. The torque is a little bit high, but not dramatically so. One thing I want to check real quick is fuel injection multi-point TFI in single take. Okay, that is correct. It looks different than it once did. Actually, I think it's just the cover. Alright, there's all of that. Dual exhaust, etc., etc. It's basically the same thing we already built in the LS. Videos. So it is a manual single standard transmission or single standard clutch. 6-speed ratios. It has an estimated top speed of 191 miles per hour. And these cars are geared extremely long. I have driven a WS6. I nearly bought a WS6. That was the car I test drove before I bought my black MR2. That came very close to entering my life, but the guy just wouldn't come down on the price enough, so it wasn't meant to be. Let's see, is this right? Second gear should be just over that 60 mark. Yeah, there we go. And they came with kind of the average sports compound. They weren't like super sticky tires, so we're gonna go with medium compound tires. I remember them having something like BF Goodwrench on them, but they were not anything like G-Forces or anything fancy. They were just a regular road tire. They did have 17s. They had 255 in the front, a 275 in the rear. They had a little bit more sidewall than this, though. What am I doing? I don't know why that happened. I messed something up. Let's see, 275, 255. And I want to make the tire bigger. Okay, that's what I was doing. I was going the wrong way. It will only let me go to a 35, but that's okay. That's close enough. It has discs all the way around. Good thing, because that's all we have to choose from. They had 2 pistons up front. I didn't get the millimeters on this particular car, so I will kind of guesstimate. Solid disc, 1 piston's in the back. So we'll just kind of average these out. These are the things that, when it comes to these recreation videos, there's a lot of gray area in this stuff. So that's why I don't say this is a science, this is just for fun. Alright, that looks pretty good. I will tune these as needed. They do have some cladding. We need 242 cooling. We have way more than that available. So we'll put it just over that. And it has no arrow on it. It had a spoiler, it had a wing on it, but they were flat. They were not there for downforce. They were there for looks. They were 4-seaters. Interior was awful. By far one of the worst interiors I've ever had the privilege of sitting in for a car that cost a lot of money. They were not cheap. So I'm going to go with standard interior on these guys. And I'll adjust the insulation and such as needed for the weight. It had your standard equipment for entertainment, you know, CD player, etc. For the era, power steering, ABS, and you could get traction control on these, which is pretty cool. Safety, we will also go with standard. It's not, they didn't go out of their way to make them safer than they needed to be. Suspension wise, we will choose sport. And we will start this baby up, and I just need to check the weight, 3,024. That is significantly lighter than it needs to be. The shortened chassis is a problem in that regard, so I may aim it a little bit short of its actual weight, but I'm going to get it close at least. Alrighty, I have fattened it up to 3,361 pounds, mostly through tweaking in here. I went up to luxury 90s on the entertainment, and I justify that by the fact that it basically had everything. When I think about it, that you could get in a 90s entertainment system. It had a premium, you know, monsoon system with a sub and an amp and all that kind of stuff. So I am justifying that, and that was one of the main weight gainers. And I went up to the premium safety. It's not advanced, but I mean, premium. I think dual airbags and stuff like that. I guess it could qualify as premium. Whatever it takes to get it up to the weight limit, basically, is the important factor. The performance aspect of the car is basically the statistics we want to look at. So let me save this guy as the Firebird WS6. And then next up is something we have not built at all. I've never built an automation, and I've never even built anything from this country in automation. That is the TVR Cerbera. I actually do not 100% know the pronunciation of that name. Cerbera is kind of just how I've always said it, so if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But this car was one of my personal favorites of the late 90s. I'd kind of forgotten about, like I had mentioned. It is a car that had a great styling. It was basically handmade. It has very unique parts, and it was featured in the early Gran Turismo games, which is where I know it from. And it's, yeah, it's just an overall cool car. It has a lot of kind of expensive elements on it, like the fact that the chassis material is aluminum, the engine placement is a front longitudinal, it has double wishbone, front and rear, it is rear-wheel drive, and the body was fiberglass. So yeah, a lot of unique elements in there, but on the flip side, a lot of really, really expensive elements in there. There's a reason these cars were low production. And if you think this stuff's expensive, wait until we get to the engine. So we're going to choose the same chassis on this one because it is the same wheelbase as the WS6. It is a much shorter car overall. It has less overhang, but it's still in the same size bracket. And once again, I will just put a grille on it, so they will look identical. Bonk. And that should be plenty. Next. Alright, so this is going to be a pretty cool engine build. It took me a long time to find this information. Some of this may not be 100% true or correct, but I did the best I could. But it was a flat plane V8 designed after the F1 engines that they kind of... There was some flat plane V8s in this era that they were apparently kind of basing their engine upon, which is a bold statement to make. 91 is the bore, and then 86 is the stroke. Alright, we're already there. It has forged internals and a forged piston, so it is a fully built, race-ready engine that's very highly precise and fine-tuned, which means, you know, it's going to have some reliability issues as well. But it, on the top end, isn't quite as extreme. It is single overhead cam, 2 valve per cylinder with aluminum heads. And then the compression ratio is 10.75 to 1. Cam profile, we'll put it 50 now because we need to make a lot of power with this engine. I'll tell you that much already. Here's right. Yes, here's right. It's NA. It's injected with multi-point. I'll do a performance intake. It is running on super unleaded. We'll give it a good fuel mix. Advance the timing. A rather low RPM limit for what it was. 6,900 was what I have read. It could go higher, but it makes peak power lower than that, which is probably due to that single overhead cam, 2 valve per cylinder nature. Then it has a tubular style header setup with dual exhaust. And that should be more than enough. I may even need to reduce that. We'll see. It does have cats. It was legal in that regards and stuff like that. So there we go. Alrighty, this engine was touted to make 450 horsepower at 6,500 RPM, 387 foot-pounds of torque. every source that I read that said, oh, by the way, when people tested their cars after the fact, they did not quite hit this number. But it was somewhere in that ballpark, so we'll get it somewhere in that ballpark. Let's see. Okay, so we're starting out super conservative. We're really short on most everything. We're having some bottom end issues. We could lower that rev limit even more, maybe down to a 6,800. And bottom end issue wise, I mean, we have forged H-beam. We could go up to the I-beam steel. That should take care of all of those issues. Yes, indeed. But we need to make significantly more power. Have a lot of cam profile left in this thing, so we will use that to our advantage. And then that means we can throw even more timing at it too. One quick test. 354 horsepower. We're still way short of our goal, but like I said, that's probably not too far from the truth. So let's see. We'll keep tuning on it though. Alrighty, I've been tuning, I've been tweaking, I've been spending money on getting this thing up to the horsepower numbers it claims to be, and I've gotten within a number closer than I actually thought we would get. I'm up to 421 horsepower. Torque is lower, but that's kind of what I expected. To make 387 foot-pounds of torque out of a small displacement flat plane V8 with single overhead cam seems a little bit unrealistic to me. But either way, 421 horsepower out of this engine is pretty unreal and pretty awesome. And to say that it was 25-ish horsepower short of the factory number kind of goes in line with everything I was reading. So that is what I'm going to do. This engine actually was called the Speed 8. You may know that there was a Speed 6, which is a straight 6. There was 3 iterations of the Speed 8, a 4.2, a 4.4, and then later a experimental 4.7, I believe. And then after that, there was the Speed 12, which was a completely different car and something that was incredible and awesome, and hopefully someday we have the ability to build that. But now we must move on. It was a manual with 5 speeds, and you can see the top speed is significantly higher on this one, but we know what the top speed of this car was. It was 185 miles per hour, and I would say it had a little bit of overdrive to it. So we will do so with the gearing and leave it pretty much as is spacing wise. It did have sports tires on it. I was able to find which tires it came with and the size and all of that. Oh drats, I think I forgot to widen the arches. Yes, I did. Okay, that's not a big deal. I can fix that. All fixed. Alright, so it had two, look at my notes, 225s in the front and 245s in the rear, and they are 17s. Sorry, they are 16s. Am I under the right car? Yes, I am. Okay. I actually was able to find a lot of information about this car, which is surprising because I'm used to dealing with these Japanese cars, and these guys are so secretive about their Japanese cars. But yeah, there was tons of information about this car out there, so that was cool and made my life easier. So there is the exact tire size that this car had. And I actually know, this is something I've not gotten on any other vehicle, I know the exact brake sizes. So it's 2 piston calipers in the front, and they had a 294mm front brake disc, close enough, and a 273 rear. And this is good information. This actually helps me in the future kind of give me a ratio. So now I know what kind of size ratio to go with in the future for braking. Definitely had a little bit more of a race feel than it did a comfort feel. This car was not meant to be your daily driver in any means. Let's see. I'll go with semi-clad on this one as well. I would hesitate to say fully clad, but then I looked at the bottom of the car, which I even found images of that. And although it has nice flat floor plans, it didn't really have any cladding under the engine or the differential, so they kind of were slacking in that regard. We'll bring that cooling down to a reasonable level. This is a 2+2, and it has, we'll say, handcrafted interior, because it is, and it is extremely nice. It featured some really cool things, including a passenger seat that would go up further than the driver's seat because the dashboard curves in so that you could get somebody in the back with, you know, relative comfort. So yeah, it had some really cool things in the interior, but we have a very, very strict weight to hit here, so I may have to kind of back off some of these. It does have power steering and ABS, and safety-wise, standard at best. I will do the same thing here and go with a sport suspension. Now let's see. Oh, look at that. We're actually almost right on the money. The weight of this car is 2,483 pounds, so I could give it a little bit more entertainment to bump that up. 2,500. That's perfectly fine, I think. I did increase the quality of that handcrafted, so we'll bump that down. Close enough. 2,492. All right. I will save this guy as the TVR Cerbera. I don't know how else you would say that. Cerbera. There's got to be a different way to say it, but I'm sticking with my way because I'm stubborn and I like to be wrong. Alright, there is one last car I'm going to build. It is a car I have built before, so I am going to build it off screen, off camera, whatever you want, and come back to you when I'm done. Okay, so just based off of this screen, can you tell which car we've built? If you can, you are really smart, because this is a generic looking car with some generic-ish looking stats. I think the biggest indicator would be this one. This is the only all-wheel drive car we've built, and that is because this is the R34 Skyline GTR. So it is not the V-Spec model, it is the regular GTR, because I want to leave room for our car to be modified and have a special edition, so there's no reason to go up against a special edition version of this car. So this is the Skyline GTR R34. Let me save that before I lose it. And just to give everybody an overview of what it looks like, keep in mind we are using the single turbo setup because that is what we have to offer. These are the statistics that I used, in case you were wondering. This is an engine I have built multiple times throughout the series, so I used a lot of the same stats, but just slightly modified to match the R34 statistics. And there you can see the power curve, the torque curve, and all of that good stuff. The year, the 1994 year, is slightly inaccurate, so let me bump that up, and that might actually gain us a little bit somewhere. Yeah, got us a little cooling and whatnot. Or sorry, got us a little power. It needs a little bit more cooling. But yeah, that did increase some of the stuff, so let me go back and save this car again. Let's see. Yeah, it gave us a little bit here and there. Let's see, the weight, this is a little bit heavier car than the other ones, but that all-wheel drive system matters there too. It has 245s front and back, 18s on sports compound. Those are the brake settings I used. These are the aero settings I used. I did give it some rear downforce because it does have a factory wing with some actual downforce elements in it. Then there's our interior setup. This car does have traction control and premium safety. It is a extremely safe car. They were built like tanks, basically. And there you go. There's the suspension settings and whatnot. So here is the statistics. Hard for me to say, apparently. But yeah, now the whole point of building these could have been to compare these statistics, but I don't really find that to be fair. If we go to detailed stats, you know, you have your tameness, sportiness, comfort, prestige, safety. All of those are great, you know, values to kind of measure your car against others. But the way I've built these, it's going to have little variances here and there in the fact that I had to add insulation to the WS6 to get the weight up. That's going to affect its comfort, that's going to affect its prestige, its safety, its sportiness, it's going to affect everything. So I don't know that those are really fair statistics to compare to. The only thing I was interested in comparing was this. What kind of times they run. So let's find out. Alrighty, so in all this madness, what did we learn? What did we find out? And how do we now rate our car versus these three? So, as we see on the track, the TVR was by far the fastest with a 126.5. Let's see what's next in my list. The Skyline was the slowest, which could be due to some tuning with the car, but overall it is the most underpowered of the group. And it is heavy, and this is just not really the kind of track that I think it would really do well with. There's not enough heavy acceleration areas that would kind of give that all-wheel drive its advantage, but still, with a time of 1 minute and 30.56, it was right on par with our car, which was a 1 minute 30.35. The Firebird was the surprise to me and actually turned a time better than our car, a 129.88. That car used its brute power and bottom heavy power curve to really pull out of those mid-range power turns. And if you look at it, its acceleration 50 to 75, 2.9 seconds is very good. So that is a very good attribute of that car for this track. So out of all of that, let's go through and kind of rate our car amongst these. So when you think about it, the TVR, which I have gone and built completely now, I gave it its looks. It looks pretty darn close to a Cerbera, so I'm pretty happy with how it came out. The headlights don't lean forward like they should, but still, for a Cone Dodger recreation, pretty good detail. That car is actually probably the favorite car now for me that I've built in automation, and it's really come back to me now that car was one of my favorites. It's handcrafted, it's using all of the stuff you learned from racing and putting it into a street car, but keeping it in a look that looks like something that's kind of sleek and something you would actually want to drive, not something exotic and kind of overdone looking. It uses kind of basic elements to achieve some awesome results. We're talking single overhead cam engine, but then with extreme, you know, flat plane V8, aluminum block, aluminum head, forged internals, a lot of kind of extreme elements that only make it perform better. They're not there to make it look cool. They're not there to say, oh, hey, look at this, I have a flat plane crank. It's just there because that's what they thought they could get the most performance out of with the limited resources they had. And that is where it kind of lies similar to our car. This is a low production vehicle. Our car is also a low production vehicle. Let's actually go back to our car and take a look at it so you have something to look at while I'm rambling on. So the Vex-Tron, I have pretty much said, is a low production vehicle that we're borrowing parts from other manufacturers to make. The difference is we're borrowing parts from other manufacturers. TVR went out and they built their own car from the bottom to the top. They built their own engine, they built their own chassis, their own suspension elements, they did their own aluminum chassis structure. We're not really going that far. We might build our own monocoque, we might build our own steel chassis, but we're going to do it in a kind of classic factory setting because we're gearing our company up for mass production. TVR never really had that goal. So I think that means our car would do pretty well in that British European kind of market as a more affordable but somewhat rare and sporty car than the TVR. It's not going to be as sexy, it's not going to be as unique and handcrafted, but it's still not your run-of-the-mill BMW or Audi or the Jaguars in that era weren't really anything spectacular, so it could do pretty well in that market. But let's switch gears then and talk about the WS6. How do we think it would do in the American market versus something like the WS6, which was pretty much the pinnacle of American muscle cars at this time? Probably not great. In a head-to-head battle with the WS6, it's slower to 60, it's slower in the quarter mile. In the end, it's slower around a big track, and it's probably going to cost more because we have the limited resources and the lack of mass production to build our cars. So in the end, it would cost more. The difference is it's a light, nimble car that is unique and has kind of that short road course SCCA, that kind of feel to it. Now granted, that scene wasn't very big in the late 90s, but it's also using a lot of parts that have a lot of aftermarket parts around them. Somebody said in the comments the last video, the BMW engine we use, the M52, I hope I'm getting that right, has a lot of aftermarket and a lot of potential in it. So it could potentially be something that could go out there and curb stomp a car like this if you were willing to take the chance on a low production vehicle. So I think the American market could also work for our car. Lastly, the Japanese market with the Skyline. Despite the fact that this car actually matches our car's statistics the most, I don't think it would be a good place for our car to go. There's still lots of Japanese sports cars in the late 90s sold in Japan. There's different versions of all of these cars. This is the GTR. There's cheaper versions too. You can get a regular Skyline. You can get a regular Supra. You can get a regular MR2. You can get all of those cars, you know, in cheaper forms and then tune them to your heart's content. I feel like our car would have a hard time breaking into this market with a more expensive and similar performance-wise kind of atmosphere to it. And the buyers in this area are going to be more loyal to their Skylines. They're highly touted cars at this point. These cars were part of Japanese culture by the late 90s, so that would be a pretty tough road to hoe, I believe. Alright, so there's what we've learned this episode. I think our Vex-Tron would do well in the American market, and it would do well in the European market. It's kind of what I was hoping to get out of the comparison. I was not. I think maybe people had the idea that I was going to compare them for detailed stats and compare them for just track time, stuff like that. No, not really. I was just looking for what kind of market our car would fall in, and that will kind of shape how the company progresses in the future. But next episode, before we go making any more cars, I want to spend some more time with the Vex-Tron, maybe doing some special editions of it, maybe doing a race car version of it, and possibly, depending on what you guys think about it, or maybe you have some suggestions, maybe even like an aftermarket tuner edition of that car, because that particular facet of especially American culture really started to blossom in the late 90s, so that could be an avenue to kind of explore with the car. But we'll explore that next time. Thanks as always for watching, and I will see you in the next one.